BTL coming at you. Good Monday, everybody. Welcome once again to BTL Bass Talk Live, where we're going to talk bass fishing and anything else that we want to talk about. Matthew, what an exciting weekend here in our great state of Oklahoma. Carl Jocumsen gets it done.
Back against the wall. Horrible year to this point. Talking on stage about how he was upside down.
Yeah.
And Dean Sylvester gets second in the Bassmaster Open on Oneida Lake from Australia. And then Carl comes. I went to the day one weigh-in there at Chicken Creek. It was weird seeing all those guys at the Chicken Creek boat ramp on Tenkiller.
Where we just kind of mess around and have jackpot tournaments.
Yeah, it's a small lake. And he looks at me and he shook his head and he goes, how the hell does a guy not have a limit on Cayuga on day one and then come out and catch 5 overs on Tenkiller? He was laughing at himself, and I looked at him, and he opens up his bag, and I look in there, and, you know, they've got all big bellies, all real healthy. I said, those look like deep fish to me. He goes, oh, mate, real deep.
Yeah.
So he's dragging that football head.
Hail to the football jig.
He goes, if I can get 5 bites a day, I'll have a shot in this thing. And then he comes back, and he barely hangs on for day 2, and then boy, what he did on the final day, not many people get to experience that with the 19 pounds, shaking, all sorts of craziness coming on.
45 minutes.
It was even less than that with the 4. He got that school fired up, and he just got, another big one. It's just what you're like, holy cow. And then you watch Zaldain, and you're like, no, Zaldain. I'll say this, Mark,
he
right
still
off
had
the
14
bat.
pounds.
I will say this.
Jeez.
I'm going to say it. Live on Sunday highlighted everything that is good about the 5-fish format.
I agree. 100%, man. I was
You
glued.
could go down the bank and catch 14 and a half, 15 inchers that weighed over a pound. Dude, I had not watched a Major League Fishing episode yet this year where the hair on my arm stood up and I got goosebumps. And when that was going down with Carl, the significance of individual fish in the 5-fish format cannot be overstated, especially in a situation like this.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
he would have got his ass kicked by guys going up and down the bank catching 14 inchers and spotted bass.
The strategy.
And watch Zaldain there at the end, catching them schooling and catching all that fish. But the strategy there, the moment it allowed, the time that it allowed him to soak in, to process what had happened when he landed that 5th 3.5-pound smallmouth, to take the time to show the viewers the Molex jig that he was using, to let the emotion sink in and really let him saturate what he was doing in that moment. And the same thing for Zaldain then, instead of just catching up on cheap 1.5-pounders, to know that he had to figure out a way to catch 3-pounders, knowing that he had to have a good bag, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It highlighted everything that was good. It was the best day of Bass Live, I think, in the history of Bass Live.
I don't know about that.
What would have been better?
I don't know. I can't think off the top of my head.
Now, I know that's a snap judgment because it's fresh in our minds.
The other thing is I think we have some vested interest because it's a body of water that we are so interested in.
Now, I was thinking about that. I totally disagree.
Why is that?
Because of the players that were involved in it with how it panned out.
But see, doesn't that make it even more intriguing for us because we are so familiar with that body of water?
Now, maybe yes, it does, but I still think I would have been just as vested in that had it been.
That's not what I'm saying.
On another fishery.
What I'm saying is, I think we have a little bit more of an agenda because of the way things played out.
Possibly.
Because we like that lake so
much.
I
mean, I got into it when Mueller and Zaldain were going head-to-head at it on Lanier, or when the first tournament of the year where you got the Johnson brothers and Rick Clunn and those guys going at it down on the St. Johns River. But I dug it, man. It was awesome.
I was glued. I had 2 things. I actually had 3 things going on. I had football, I had the PBA, and I had Bassmaster Live.
Holy cow, you were triple dipping.
The whole thing was going on right here in the studio, and I was absolutely glued with what was going on Lake Tenkiller. And I think the vast majority of the people that were fishing fans were just mesmerized by what Carl did on that final day. And you got to give it up to Chris, too. So close once again, but just an epic day by Carl, and the way that he did it and that flurry that he went through says so much for what they're trying to accomplish in this game from a fan perspective, and just seeing the glory and the emotion that went out in that 45-minute span was just like nothing I could remember.
And you got to give it up to Chris. I was having a conversation with someone who said, man, Chris has just got to be ready to go postal after this. And I said, I think he's okay with it. Obviously he wants to win, but man, you look back at the tournaments that he has been in the hunt, and it's been a lot, going back to the Classic when he was catching him on the mag draft. He was second to Paul Mueller on Lake Lanier. He was second to Jamie Hartman on Gunnersville, and he was second to Carl on Tenkiller. And look back at how that went down. Throw the Classic out because that was kind of a standalone deal. I mean, if he'd caught him there, he'd have caught him. But the second place on Lake Lanier, Mueller went out and caught an absolute beast of a spotted bass and put a clinic on out there. So he got beat on Lanier. Jamie Hartman had that epic topwater flurry on the pencil popper, or on the walking bait, the topwater walking bait on Gunnersville, a lake he'd never been to. So he got beat there. Yeah. And then Carl went out and had a crazy day with a football head jig, and he got beat there. I mean, Chris did everything he could have done in those tournaments. He put 14 pounds on a very stingy Tenkiller on a unique pattern, fishing to his strengths. He put the big spoon in his hands at Gunnersville and found a school where he just ran out of time, and he was drop shotting deep spotted bass and throwing a small swim bait on Lanier that's his bread and butter, and got beat there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like he's going out catching 5 or 6 pounds and not holding on. I mean, he's putting in winning efforts and just getting beat by 3 guys who had career days.
It happens.
Now, if there's any justice,
what's that?
He'll win Angler of the Year after all that. But Canterbury did what he had to do to maintain a lead, too.
Yeah.
I think 11, 12-point lead going into the final stop, which is next week up at Lake St. Clair. Have not seen a tournament this time of the year on that fishery, which is the smallmouth population has exploded. Remember when we first started going to St. Clair, it was, do you run the river? Do you go into the lake? Do you go down to Huron? Because the average size in St. Clair kind of varies from year to year. Yeah. And I mean, it has exploded with the 4s, 5s, and 6s. We saw what FLW did there last year with Chad Grigsby and Dylan Hayes almost breaking the 100-pound mark. These guys have a lot of history there. A lot of those guys that came over from FLW fished it last year, made the top 50 cut. The Matt Aries, the Scott Canterbury, guys like that. So very interesting tournament to wrap up the Angler of the Year Championship next week.
Now, there is somebody out on the instant feedback. Our good friend Chad in Canada says he disagrees with you.
What?
And he says that BPT not being as hair-raising, as he called it, as bass. He's referring to the 8-pounder that Edwin caught in the last few moments. Hang on. And then also the flurry that Edwin had in the red crest.
But none of those fish were significant. He still would have won. It's like scoring a touchdown when you're up 65-7 in a college game. No fish was important. I like watching it with Carl hooked up for 45 seconds to a minute, or the braid zinging off of Chris Zaldain's spinning reel, going, oh my God. The phone's ringing. I'm not answering it. I'm burning a hot dog in the microwave, and I'm glued to it, seeing if Carl's going to land this thing, going, don't grab the line, don't grab the line.
Yeah.
I mean, that is 30% of his weight on the hook right there.
Yeah.
As opposed to just another fish that can be made up.
Hey, man, that's just one fan's opinion, Matthew.
I know, but I'm just saying, that's the stuff where you know it was critical. Edwin would have won that without the 8-pounder. Edwin would have won that without that flurry. He could have caught half as many fish and still would have won by 30 pounds.
It was kind of interesting to watch, though. Hey, Not as compelling as what was going on yesterday.
Did you see how much he soaked that jig in Bang?
No.
It reminded we were talking about this before the show, and I get kind of a rant here, but the spray.
Preach on, brother.
The spray Bang, right? The spray Bang.
Yeah.
Who makes? Is that a Gambler product?
Yeah.
In the black can.
At least it used to be. I don't know. It might have changed hands.
There's shad. There's crawfish. There's garlic, and then there's combo, shad and crawfish.
All right.
That scent of that Bang,
very distinct.
The combo.
Yes.
I liken it to carbureted motors first thing in the morning. You know that smell?
Okay.
That smell that you have in the morning where it's like, it's tournament morning.
Yeah.
I associate that Bang scent with my earliest tournament days, 14, 15, 16 years old, where I would soak a Picasso black and blue rattling jig in Bang about every third cast. Carl is obsessed with the Bang. If you notice, I mean, it was cast. I mean, he'd coat that thing. It'd just be white, foamy, frothy thing, and he'd chuck it out there. You'd see the damn oil slick all the way to the bottom and back to the boat. Looked like the
Exxon Valdez.
Looked like the Exxon Valdez out there on Lake Tenkiller.
Jeez, well, yeah. Like I said, man, hail to the football jig. It's one of my favorite things to pick up on.
Now, in your earlier years, you'd have said he should have hung it up.
What do you mean?
Carl, not catching him, talking about how much he's in the hole. He's been doing it 7-8 years now.
He's been doing it that long?
Yeah. Mixed results. No.
Yeah. I think his earnings before this was barely over 100,000. I think. I don't know. I haven't looked. But you talk about life changing. That, and he's getting married in 2 weeks, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it was awesome. It was so cool to watch how things developed and how he got his first blue trophy.
Were you surprised at how they caught him?
A little bit. I really thought, and I was very vocal in last week's show, that I really thought they would catch him better when the rain moved in and the cloud cover moved in.
And they did.
Well, yeah, but they were not catching him that good at all on day one.
I thought there'd be more of a topwater presence.
Yeah.
More of a go down the bank with the whopper plopper, the toad, the buzzbait, the walking bait.
Yeah.
There were a couple caught that way.
You know, and I'm sure this happens all across the country with fans that watch live for whatever tournament trail. It doesn't matter. Where you're very familiar with the body of water that they're fishing on, that you see spots of, well, why the heck? How come I've never fished there before? What is he fishing? Why is he doing? Oh, that's kind of, looky there. That's really cool. All right, I'm going to have to take note of that. And then you go the complete opposite of, I've fished that place for years.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool to see that stuff and see how it develops with the guys that are the best in the world.
Yeah. Drew Cook.
Yeah.
He fished some areas where I'm like, I feel like I should know where that rock striation is. Like, it's really pronounced, really unique. And I have no idea where on the lake he is. And then other ones where I'm like, he's flipping a jig down that stretch?
Yeah.
I've died. And then, it was really cool.
Yeah. It was neat. Very, very, very exciting event. And now we have to look forward to the AOY Championship on St. Clair. And 50 guys going to battle it out. And really, how many do you think would be in the hunt? How many do you think?
There's like 4. How many are they taking to the Classic?
Well, the projected cut line is 42.
42. So there's 8 guys that are going to go there. So let me look at the points. And this will leave you with an excellent transition.
Canterbury's got a 9-point lead.
An excellent transition into our guest today. 761 to 752. But so the projected cut is at 42, which is Paul Mueller. 536. I bet he wish he hadn't gone out and 0 day 2 at Gunnersville now. Jay Yellis is the last man in at 499. So
the 50th spot, correct?
Yeah, Yellis is just going out. I mean, if you win the Angler of the Year Championship, are you in the Classic?
Do what now?
If you win this 50 boat tournament, are you in the Classic? Is it a win and you're in automatic?
Qualified?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Because like Ed Lauren.
No,
Jay
it's not
Yellis.
a double qualify.
There's a couple guys that are just going to go have fun and catch smallmouth.
Because they're so far out?
Yeah, but I mean, Mueller's the projected cut at 36. Yeah, because remember, the points are only worth half as much, basically.
Yeah.
But you've got, in all reality, Hudnall, Hamilton, Kelly J, Jake Whitaker, Mueller, and Tyler Rivette. That is going to be your group of anglers that are vying for those last classic spots. Because then in 40th, you jump up. Cliff Prince is 14 points ahead of 41st.
That line could change, too.
Yeah, so 41st and 46th are separated by 16 points.
Okay, what about the top 5 guys, though? Is it down to a 4-angler race, a 5-angler race?
Theoretically, 22, 30, 40,
mathematically.
50, 60. Mathematically, it's like 6 or 7 guys, but really it's, this is going to be good.
I think it's a 3-angler race.
This is going to be really good.
Do you agree or disagree with that?
41, 50. No, I'd throw Stetson in there. I'd put 4 anglers.
Okay.
That gives you 20 points. That's doable.
Okay.
Canterbury, Zaldane, Corey Johnson, and Stetson Blaylock. So Canterbury has experience on it last year. Zaldane, hottest angler going right now. That's his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And Corey Johnson caught him there last year. I mean, that's a slugfest for him. And then the same with Stetson Blaylock. He's on the roll too. So.
All right. Good set of shows this week. We're going to kick things off this week by a guy, very, very good friend of BTL and the Bass Zone. Been in this game for so many years. One of the top-tiered guys when it comes to talking the game in both a seminar setting, television setting, and obviously a talk show setting. So we're going to have Bernie Schultz on today. He was the first guy out, finished in 51st place of the AOY standings, and is sitting at home now. And when I spoke to Bernie last night, he wasn't very happy, and hopefully he wasn't mad at me for calling him and getting him on the show. But I thought it would be a very interesting show to get the first guy out on the show today and talk a little bit about, once again, Matthew, what went right, what went wrong, and what would you change? Because that is well, let's just face it, it's not where you want to be, the first guy out, below the 50 line. And with Bernie having done this game for so many years, hopefully we can learn something from Bernie.
I'm looking at you. Already put that we're getting Carl tomorrow. You're that confident?
I have that much confidence in you, man. You're like buds with him.
No, I used to be good buddies with him.
You still are. You think the friendship has just suddenly exploded and it's not there anymore?
We both have a lot on our plate. You know how that works with certain guys. Now, I'm sure he's got 2 continents that are texting him 24 hours a day. Everyone wants to get him, and he's got the wedding thing going on.
When he sees your number,
I've reached out.
He will respond to you.
The problem is when there's 800 numbers ahead of me.
Right.
If he gets back to it. So we booked him tomorrow. So we're
trying.
That's it.
The goal is
I've reached out. I'll reach out to him again. Hopefully we'll get Carl on.
I've also done something else that's kind of cool. I actually have reached out to Jason Belmonte to see if we can get something hooked up. And for those people that don't know, Jason Belmonte, the greatest bowler
going right now.
Right,
and he's an Australian too.
Yeah, that's why.
What is with this show? This is getting weird. So what's a harder get? Belmo or KVD? Or is that probably about an equal?
No.
Belmo?
KVD. No.
Is
KVD.
harder?
Oh, yeah.
To get on a show,
to
get on a
100%.
podcast than Belmonte?
100%.
No way.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Belmonte's way more recognizable in the public figure.
Yeah, but he is all about dealing with the media. And being and makes himself even more accessible than anybody at the top of the game that I've ever seen.
You're like, hey, you want to come on a bass fishing talk show?
No. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to set something up for the future because, in case you missed it, I actually had a video of Belmonte from Bowl Expo, and he was wishing Carl the best. Now, since Carl got his blue trophy, it'd be cool to hook those two
anyway,
up. That's what we're going to try and do.
Hopefully Carl tomorrow. If not, I do have a backup in mind if we're not able to get him, which is very close. It'll work. And then Wednesday, Eric Lopez, responsible for putting the Elite Series
Director of Operations
schedule together for the 2020 season. It was just announced. Chickamauga added there in February. He is going to jump on. He's actually on planes flying places today and tomorrow. He's going to jump on Wednesday via the phone to talk a little bit about the 2020 Classic and the upcoming Elite Series schedule.
All right. Jam-packed week. Hopefully we will get Carl on tomorrow.
Bernie's got to like the 2020 schedule. Bernie catches him up north. Yeah. Half the season's up north next year.
Yeah, we'll talk to him about that. All right, coming back, taking a break. Be right back with Bernie Schultz. Everybody stay tuned.
Serious about catching fish, that HDS is a dead giveaway. You've got the best fish finding sonar money can buy. Time to build the ultimate fish finding system with live sight sonar. See what your lure is doing in real time. Watch fish strike as it happens. See for yourself. Take the Live Sight Sonar 30-day challenge. If Live Sight Sonar doesn't help you find and catch more fish, send it back, no questions asked.
Gamakatsu, the G Finesse series.
In my opinion, the G Finesse series is the only lineup of hooks you need for any fishing you do.
But I know a lot of guys haven't used this hook yet. The G Finesse series has the nano coat on the hooks. The nano coating makes the hooks sharper, smoother for a better hookup ratio.
20% stronger than black nickel. Wow, that is incredible. That's a lot of strength.
My Gamakatsu G Finesse series, perfect finesse fishing for you.
Check out the G Finesse series of hooks by Gamakatsu.
Guys, Gerald Swindle, Sunline Pro Staff. If you're a flipper, a slackline hook setter, you're really putting a lot of impact into your hook set, look for the shooter. It comes off the smooth, really smooth. Like when you're flipping, it is smooth. If you're gonna be drop shotting and cranking, Sniper's the deal, man. It seems like it's a little bit less likely, like on a sharp hook set, it doesn't seem like it likes it as much. But for coming off the spool on spinning rod, leaders, cranking, like if I'm gonna throw a big plug at Guntersville, I've still got strong tensile strength. It's not gonna give out on me, but yet the line's thin enough it'll get down. So to me, shooter takes a hook set, Sniper's for everything else. So if you're gonna slack line them, go shooter.
The name SPRO says it all. SPRO stands for Sports Professionals. When you look at the pro staff that SPRO has brought on board over the past 15 years, it's been pretty incredible. I mean, one got it just then. From the development of the rock crawler to the McStick, from the Fat Popper to the Little John series, when you tie a SPRO bait on, you know it's been designed by a professional to get the job done.
Blue Water by TH Marine, offering LED lighting solutions for your boat, trailer, truck, ATV, and so much more. Engineered and built to be rugged with waterproof and submersible options. Designed for easy installation, Blue Water is available in a variety of colors and styles. All backed by a limited lifetime warranty. Blue Water by TH Marine.
At Duckett Fishing, we have assembled the top pros in the country to help us design rods to give you a competitive advantage. Castability, strength, durability, action, sensitivity, weight and balance, and consistency. Combine that with the best warranty in the industry, and you have rods that are pro-driven.
Duckett Fishing, pro-driven.
Hey guys, Cliff Perch here with AFCO. I've got the new camo hooded reaper. It's going to be a great thing both for fishing and hunting this fall. I can tell you a couple of the features about it. Got the face mask like all the reapers do, vented in front. It's got the fleece on the inside, so it's really comfortable. It's super warm. When you come down to the pocket, it's got this little snap system called Block Tapey, and it's silent. You know, it doesn't make that sound that other snaps and other systems that hook it together make. Great for hunting, and it's going to keep that stuff in your pocket.
I got my power pole down, stuck in the mud in the bottom of the lake, sitting so still in the wind and the waves, could even be a hurricane. I got my power pole down.
All right, we are back, kicking off a Monday. Fall is here, my friend.
Yesterday was the first day of fall. So literally fall is here.
Yeah.
Still doesn't feel like fall, though.
No, it's very humid here in Oklahoma.
It's going to be like 90 the rest of the week.
Today.
A little cooler this week, but then heat pick back up.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, it is time for our special guest today. And I need to get him queued up here. Let's see here. Bernie, you there, man?
I'm here.
All right, let me get you queued up. We have him live via Skype, and I know you're a little bit tired. Long drive from Oklahoma to Florida, but we greatly appreciate you taking time out, man.
For you guys, anything.
All right, I know it sucks. I mean, let's just be honest. Finishing in 51st when they take 50 to the AOY championship, how are you feeling right now?
Probably too tired to be pissed right now. I was really upset at Tenkiller. I left frustrated. In fact, I was so mad I decided to do something I normally just drive straight home, but I actually went to Lake Fork and spent a few hours on Lake Fork the next morning to get my mind off of it and scout the lake. I'm not sure if that's where Bass Fest or Texas Fest will be next season, but I got a hunch that it might be. So I thought I'd kill two birds with one stone, scout the lake and get my mind off my failure for the season.
Did it work?
A little bit, yeah. I ran into an old friend. I don't know if you guys remember David Vance. He guides on the lake.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, great guy. He used to fish the Bass Tour back when I was getting started. And spent a little time with him and talking the old days, and that got my mind off of it. And then I got back on the road about 11 o'clock and drove all the way home. Took till 2:30 in the morning to get here. But the best part of the week was watching Carl win that tournament. That was such a rush. So proud for that kid. I can't imagine the obstacles he went through to get to that point. And I'm just so glad to see somebody, a good guy, get the reward.
All right, Bernie, I want to go back to the start of the season. Like everybody, you probably had a really, really good vibes at the start. And then as the season progressed, what was kind of your mindset and what really happened during the season to end up in 51st place?
It's hard to pin down any single thing. I mean, I could blame it on a lost fish the second day of Tenkiller. I had a spot hit the deck of the boat and go back out the boat that would have given me the 2 points I needed to tie Jay. I don't know what the tiebreaker would have been. I only weighed 4 fish that day, so I don't know. I know the tiebreaker's the most weight, I think, for the season. I don't know if Jay would have had me or if I'd have had Jay, but you can't point to just one fish. It's a bunch of things that happened. I only caught 10 pounds the first day at the St. Lawrence, which is, one of my favorite fisheries. The tournament I was looking most optimistic towards in the entire schedule. The St. John's, I brought in one fish on the third day there. The weather changed, it muddied my water, and I failed to finish a limit out. And there's other tournaments. I mean, it's hard to pinpoint one. It came down to one fish, but you could pick probably 3 tournaments where that one fish was a factor.
We were talking before. Is it if you win the AOY championship, are you in the classic, or would you have still had to climb?
No, you are not. I can give you a scenario. If you'll recall, Seth Feider barely made it in by the skin of his teeth, and he won the AOY championship, and he did not go to the classic.
So in all likelihood, I mean, let's put a little positive twist on this. Had you finished in 50th, you'd have just been going up for basically a trip to fish on Lake Sinclair. The way the points shook out, it'd have been hard to jump all the way up to that 42.
Yeah, but I don't know that it would have been impossible. Back then, it was a 100-man field with a 100-point system. We got a 75-man field with a 100-point system, and I'm not sure how it would have shaken out. I'd like to have had that chance. I love St. Clair. That was the most frustrating thing, is not being able to go to a lake that I love that much. The smallmouth are very aggressive. They're big. Sometimes they're easy, sometimes a little more difficult, but I like that lake a lot, and it's just frustrating that I'm not going to be there.
All right, I want to talk about Tenkiller real quick. Have you ever been on that lake before, Bernie?
Never have. I had I did a little bit of research before it was announced. I just had a gut feeling I better check on some area lakes in case, because Fort Gibson, as you guys know better than anybody, thing is fluctuating constantly and can be at flood one day and low the next. I don't know, but anyway,
it's true.
I played the odds. I played the odds and did a little research on Tenkiller, and I didn't know. After all that research, I didn't even realize it was a 16-inch size limit till I got there, and that was pretty alarming. I don't like 16-inch limit lakes. It's especially when the season's on the line. I know Bass's back was against the wall. They had to make a decision. They had to have the tournament, and it's a good lake. I'm not frustrated by the body of water as much as the limit, the 16-inch limit. There's a ton of fish in that lake. I said on stage both days, it's a great lake for a beginner. You can catch them any way you want to catch them, and you can catch them just about every cast, but catching 16-inchers, that's a tall order, especially when there's so much pressure, so much on the line.
That would explain why Jeffries and I like that lake so much, Bernie. We always go and are always like, holy cow, we're catching them every cast here.
Beginner's lake.
It's a great lake. I mean, you can catch them so many different ways, a multitude of techniques and lures. It's a great lake, and it's like I said, if I were going to hold a class on the water, that would be the lake I'd choose.
Let me ask you this. So Tenkiller's about 12,000 acres, 75 boat field on it. Probably one of the smallest full field venues. It might be the smallest full field venue that a regular season Elite Series tournament has ever taken place on. How did it fish? Did it fish big? Did it fish small? And looking back on it, obviously the 2020 schedule's out, a lot of heavy hitters, locations with big weights, a lot of massive fisheries. But having fished on a body of water the size of Tenkiller now with a full field, do you think that opens it up to a number of other fisheries that may be unfamiliar in that 10 to 15,000 acre size?
If the field expands, which I know it'll expand some next year, there was plenty of room on that lake. The problem was the falling water. I think guys would have spread out better. There have been more fish shallow, bigger fish shallow than were caught. There was a hot zone in that lake. If you watch the show, and I was in that area, it was north of Takeoff. Not way up the river. There was a few fish to be caught way up the river, but that upper third of the lake, that was the hot zone. There was a lot of pressure there. It was tough to get a shoreline to yourself. And I think that, Carl did the smart thing. He fished down the lake. There's probably fewer fish. And Zaldane, same thing. There were fewer fish down there, but the quality was there if you had the discipline to grind it out.
Bernie, let me ask you this. Having not been on the lake before, Lake Tenkiller, did you pull up to many spots or many areas and go, well, this looks exactly the same?
It's a good pattern lake. To answer your question, Matt, I kind of got off to a tangent. It would open up some other bodies of water, provided they don't go back to a big field.
Okay.
That's all. If we stay at 75 to 80 guys, lakes like that are great. That size lake I think guys can spread out. I didn't like the fact that the water fell. It just the lake shrinks when that happens, literally and figuratively. But anyway, what was your question, Mark? I'm sorry.
Did a lot of the areas that you were fishing, having never been on the lake, all look the same?
Yeah. It's good. There was some. I don't want to say redundancy, but there was a lot of similar areas. If you could, a bluff wall is a bluff wall. A transition bank's a transition bank. The back of a pocket flooded with bushes. That lake has a lot of that stuff, and it's repetitious as you move around the lake. As you get lower on the, towards the dam, the terrain changes quite a bit. But I thought it was an excellent pattern lake. You could catch fish in an area on a given type of pattern or lure selection and repeat that in another part of the lake.
So a lot of windshield time, even after you went to Lake Fork. During that windshield time, what did you reflect back on, Bernie, on your way home?
Just aggravated with myself. Decisions I made, decisions I failed to make, the things I overlooked, simple things that I overlooked. Watching Chris Zaldain catch those smallmouth on flat points, super shallow in the middle of the day. I got to qualify that a little bit. It was great that he made that adjustment and figured that out, but that really wasn't happening in practice because we didn't have the wind. There was a lot of wind during the tournament days, and I'm not so sure he discovered that you could make that pattern work early or late, super late, but it was viable throughout the day because of the wind, I think, and that wasn't happening during the practice days. It was still and calm and hot, and the fish just they weren't the keeper size fish, the 16 and over type fish weren't cooperating very well during practice.
I'm curious. You're from Florida. You fished all over for the past 40 years. How would you categorize Tenkiller? Is it a West Coast lake, a northern lake, an Oklahoma lake, a mixture of all the lakes? Just from an outsider seeing it for the first time, if you had to put it in a box, what box would you put it in?
I'd say it's a highland reservoir, and the primary patterns there are, or the types of cover are rock and wood. I mean, that's about it. When the water's up, you got a lot of wood to fish. But it's a highland reservoir, in my opinion. It's healthy. It's too healthy, actually. I think they need to take some of the fish out. I would modify that size limit or introduce some stripers. It's got way too many fish.
Fish fry at Bernie's house.
But I didn't think I'd ever say that. Introduce stripers to a lake, but there's just too many bass in the lake, and we see that in Florida in some of these phosphate ponds and these mines like Benville Plantation. Mm-hmm. They have to take fish out of there because it gets too competitive and they can't grow. There's just so many small fish, they just compete with each other and nobody grows up. So they take fish out, and then that increases the size.
All right, I want to go to the instant feedback, Matt and Bernie. A number of questions out here, kind of unrelated, kind of all over the board, unrelated to Tenkiller, but I thought it'd be great to get to some of the questions that the people have for you, Bernie. Scott in Virginia wants to know, he said, ask Bernie about the tube setup you were using at the St. Johns River that Guido Hibden showed you.
Oh, okay. Well, that was a cool deal. That was a fall tournament. And I drew Guido, and I actually, through the day, I was on fish in Rodman Reservoir, but it was early in my career. Guido was bigger than life. He was on top of his game. He had made the Gets It a household term, and I wanted to go with the master and learn. So I went with him, and we went down the St. John's to the Clear Springs in Lake George, and it was not a spawn tournament, but he wanted to fish, sight fish in those clear runs in the springs, and I was all in. And basically what it was a Texas rig, kind of a Texpose deal, a little tiny weight, like a 16th ounce bullet weight. We didn't have tungsten back then, but we used a little tiny 16th or 32nd ounce weight, which was pegged to the top of the tube. And we used the old XP hook that Shaw Grigsby had, if you remember that hook. It was kind of a Kale style looking hook. And we Texposed the bait and skipped it around. And if there were fish in the run that you could get to without, if there wasn't any grass or wood and nothing to snag, he also threw a exposed jig head, a super lightweight exposed jig head. And Guido was all about feeding the fish, trying to intercept the fish on its track and not really throwing right at the fish. You can't do that. And I learned a valuable lesson that day. I've won a lot of money because of that day with Guido. And we both did good, actually. We didn't catch much that day, but I went back to Rodman the next day and he went back to the Springs and we both did pretty good in the tournament, but it was a valuable lesson.
Talk about that piqued my interest. You said feeding the fish or leading the fish?
Both. If you saw the angle that a fish was swimming on, he'd try to present the lure in front of the fish just far enough where he'd find it, but not see it until it was descending. Not splash right, where he'd see the splash or the presentation, but he would see the lure, he'd discover the lure, and the ideal scenario is to pull the bait away from the fish on the same track it's traveling, because then it looks like it's trying to escape. If you try to pull the lure at an angle towards the fish, it doesn't work very well. You need an aggressive fish or a lot of luck for that to really work out.
All right.
We're talking about cruising fish here.
Mm-hmm. Post-spawn fish then, or pre-spawn?
These were nothing to do with the spawn.
Nothing.
They were just in the spring. Yeah,
okay.
Nothing. It was in September or October. I can't remember which.
So they were up just actively feeding and pitching?
No, they were actually not doing anything, or they were very complacent, just kind of sitting in this spring run. The water was cool, and they just live there at certain times of the year. And I don't think they might feed at night, but they're not very active fish.
Wow. All right. Blake in Knoxville, Tennessee wants to know, for the average fan, would it be possible for you to explain the process of ordering your new boat, rigging it, and then ended up selling it? What time frame is that? How does that whole process work?
It's now. It happens right now. That process. It's not as simple as it sounds. I complain about it. I know we get all this equipment, and we're really fortunate to have all this great equipment every year, but it's a hassle, believe it or not. About the time you get the boat rigged and running and tweaked the way you want it, it's time to sell it. The way it happens is the end of the season, we pull the wrap off, do any necessary maintenance or repairs to the boat so that it can be sold. Once the boat's sold, you order a new boat. That requires contacting all your sponsors, Ranger, Mercury, Garmin, PowerPole, all the companies that have product, TH Marine, all those guys. You order your equipment, have it shipped to your boat manufacturer, and in the meantime, you're filling out your request forms for continued sponsorship with your boat company and your outboard and all your other accessory companies. It's a lot of paperwork, a lot of back and forth, and then you submit all that stuff, and if it's approved, they will begin the process. And the boat usually takes about 3 months to be delivered.
Wow, there you have it. All right, cool stuff. Now, here's an interesting question. Brad in Tennessee also wants to know, since you drive a lot, all those miles on the road, what is your favorite gas place to stop and get gas and food?
Big truck stops are hard to beat. There's always an open pump, it seems like, and they accommodate RVs. And when you're trailering a boat, I try to avoid small stations when I can. Then they usually have like a Subway or something like that, so you can grab something and get on the go. I don't like stopping. Pit stops, I try to keep them as brief as possible and get the miles behind me.
All right.
I want to go back. You mentioned it before we came on air, how happy you were, how impressed you were with Carl and him winning and how hard he works. I mean, you've been in this game. You're approaching 40 years now. I mean, I think it was like the mid-'80s when you kind of started full-time. So you were one of the young guys to come on and work and make a name for yourself. But you've seen over the decades a lot of stories, a lot of young guys come in and either stick and go. I mean, you've seen all the guys that are fishing now basically come in at some point. Kind of put into context with you, is Carl just another young, hardworking angler, or is this something special based on his story that's kind of once in a generation thing that you believe is a little different than your typical guy?
It's definitely a unique story. I mean, that guy had major obstacles, everything from a foreign, coming into a foreign country and trying to stay here long enough to get established. And, he didn't have bass fishing back in Australia. He had fishing, but he didn't have bass fishing. And bass are unique creatures. They're starting to find their way around the globe. They're being introduced in a lot of places: Spain, Germany, Italy, France. They're in Korea, they're in Japan, but I don't think they're in Australia yet. If they are, there's probably very limited access to them. So it's remarkable that he came here with a basic set of skills, angling skills, and then adapted to a fish that he was unfamiliar with. And the fact that he did it, on a tight budget, I'm sure it was tough on him. And I like to see that. It's same for the Japanese, Takahiro Omori and the other Japanese anglers that came here, the Canadian anglers. I mean, they had bass. They're familiar with bass, and the Japanese had bass. They were familiar with bass fishing before they got here. But it had to be challenging coming to a different country and trying to survive and acclimate and do it in a really quick, expedient fashion so that you don't run out of money before you can see some kind of return.
Bernie, here recently, the international anglers have been lighting it up.
The Opens, all the Japanese anglers.
The situation that took place at Grand Lake, a lot of the young Japanese anglers did very, very well. Why do you think the international guys are doing so well?
I can't explain that, but I love the fact that they're here. If we want this sport to be truly international, you got to have these guys. I liken it to, this is going to sound strange, but I liken it to surfing. Surfing was, it was an American sport early on, and now it's a global competition, and it's neat to see that sport grow, and our sport's growing similarly just because of the introduction of bass into these foreign countries. South America has bass now. I mean, there's a lot of places where bass are. I remember early in my career, I ran into a guy named Gary Eusta from South Africa who qualified for the Classic, and that was cool. And then some Canadian guys started fishing, and then we got our first Japanese angler, and it's just neat to see the sport evolve in my time and expand globally. I look forward to the day where we're actually competing on foreign soil. There's a group of guys, select group that has a tour, a world tour, not just a U.S. tour.
Would you like to see an Elite Series event go up to Canada or go down into Mexico?
Yeah, or further, to South Africa, if Australia ever builds a reservoir and that harbors bass, let's go there too. Japan.
You're ready for the Elite Series World Tour.
Well, I think, at some point that may be a reality. It sounds comical now, but surfing was the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It started small in Hawaii and the U.S. and then it spread, and now it's global. I mean, there's surfers from New Zealand, surfers from Europe, and they're highly competitive. Ireland, who would think surfing would be a sport in Ireland, a competitive sport, but. And fishing's I think bass fishing, because of the common interest of the species, the black bass and how it's spread, I think it might be reality and maybe in our lifetime.
Come on, Matthew. I'm sticking up for my West Coast friends out there. We can't even get to the West Coast yet, and you're wanting to go to France or Italy? Come on, Matthew.
Well, actually, I fished. Yamamoto took a crew over to Spain. We competed on Lake Caspi in Spain. And it was the Italians were there. There were French anglers there. There were Portuguese anglers. It was a true European championship, and I was really proud to be a part of it. And they know what they're doing. They're students of the sport, just like the Japanese. I mean, the Japanese they're very attentive to detail, and I think that's one reason they've been competitive. The Johnstons and Gussie, those guys are technicians, and they're the start of a wave. It's coming, guys. It's going to be an international sport on a bigger scale, and I hope I get to see it. That's cool. They got the USABassin.org. I know that Scott Martin's done it. David Dudley, Frederick Banis has been involved a number, and I think they've done South Africa, and they've done some, I think Italy or something. They kind of have one every year, but it's there, but it just hasn't really taken hold. It doesn't have legs yet. Yeah, it doesn't have legs yet as far as just the average fan over here following it. You really have to kind of search to find it. You could buy jerseys and hats, though. It's kind of cool. It says USA Bassin on it with the flag and stuff. Cool. All right, Bernie, I don't know if you've had time to even think about it, but have you seen the 2020 schedule, and do you have any thoughts on where you guys are going next year? I do. In fact, I've already been doing my homework. I'm hoping they announce Texas Fest on Lake Fork again. I've already done some homework on Eufaula, and I've already done some homework on the St. John's, and I plan to do more homework. I'm mad, and I want to get even. I really don't like being the bubble guy, the point, the guy that's first out, the bump guy is what I'm trying to think of. It's happened to me before, and it made me bounce back more aggressively, and I'm going to do the same this time. We've had a number of guys on the show say that they fish better when they're pissed off. Is that the case with you? Absolutely, yeah. I had a really bad season in 2014, and I came back and had one of my best seasons in 2015. I got a lot of distractions. I'm trying to do a lot of things. My passion is saltwater. I hate to say that on this show, but I really enjoy saltwater fishing, especially with my son. Daniel, he loves it as well, and so I try to put as much time into that as I can. And I think this season it probably hurt my season on the Bass Tour, but no excuses. It was a good schedule, and I just made a lot of mistakes. I should have been very comfortably in the points. I just found ways to screw it up, and it's on me. I can't blame any body of water. I should have been prepared for all of them, and they're all good bodies of water. I think even Winyah Bay, I was on enough fish to survive there. The Sabine will be our Winyah Bay this next season, but there's enough fish to do well, and somebody's going to win that event, and I'm just going to be optimistic going in. I'm going to pre-fish there. I'm going to do a lot of pre-fishing this season. All right, one final question from the instant feedback about this season. One of our longtime listeners and watchers of this show, Mike in New York, wants to know, do you know or can you recall specifically where you think you missed the boat at the St. Lawrence River? Yeah, that's so aggravating. I found some fish, some big schools of fish deep. And that's not normally my deal. I'm usually in 10 foot of water or less, and I'm doing a lot of sight fishing. And I got off my game. These fish were so easy, and I found 3 different schools, and I thought through, attrition that I could get to a good average weight fish. And it was every cast on these schools of fish, but they were all small, and I never got any quality. I ended up with 10 pounds the first day. I just let the clock run out. I was a long ways from check-in. And it's on me. I couldn't abandon that game plan. I committed to it, and I'm so mad at myself for it, because 10 pounds on the St. Lawrence, you might as well stay in bed. Wow. My last question. What's the latest antique lure that you've added to your collection? Funny you should ask. It's not the latest. Do you really have it sitting there? This was not planned. No, it wasn't. No, it's not. But I know you guys like that stuff. Yeah. I want to show you a lure. If I'd had this lure, I might have made the AOI championship. I want you to look at the mouth on this lure. Can you see that? Yeah, it looks like the front of Ike's boat. That's right. This is a Bender and Flynn Rainbow Tiger. It's from the 50s. It was made in Florida. I have a Florida collection of early lures, and that's that lure rather is it just kind of, that's my attitude.
How is that fished? Is that a topwater plug or a?
Yeah, it's a topwater plug. You jerk it. It's called a darter. This class lure back in the day or today even is referred to as a darter. It's nothing like today's darters, but you basically pulled it like you would a popper, and you could jerk it below the surface, and it would kind of wobble and wag, but it would display some water as you popped it. That notch in the mouth would force some water to splash.
What is a comparable lure, modern lure, that's even like that? Because I don't have anything remotely close to that.
Probably any concave, longer. You didn't really walk these. They would walk. The darter would, but it didn't have a weighted tail section.
Like a chug bug?
A chug bug's a good comparison. Excellent comparison.
All right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Nice.
How'd you find that? Is that like an eBay thing? You go to...
No. This is actually a friend of mine that I used to go to shows with. He's deceased now. He died a few years back, and his wife sold off his collection, and he wanted a lot of the stuff to go to his friends in the hobby, and I got to pick that piece from him. But that's the sad thing about this. I've been in the hobby a while, and a lot of the guys that are in it, like I am, they're going away. It's a sad reality, but we need some younger kids to get into the hobby, because it's the history of our sport, and so much of lure and reel development took place in this country. And it just would be neat if these young kids that are getting interested in competitive fishing would also have an appreciation for the history of the sport and lure development and reel development. I mean, it all was pioneered right here in America, where the black bass prevail. So I just would like somehow to recruit this new generation and get them involved in the hobby. It'd be really helpful.
I got an idea. We're always throwing out ideas for tournaments. I mean, you get some of those popular older lures that aren't worth hundreds of dollars, but host a bass tournament with a list of vintage lures, and that's all you can use in the tournament. I mean, we're talking like a Snagless Sally, perhaps a Jitterbug, some of those older ones that, if you break them off, you're not, losing any inheritance over it. But I think that would be cool to have a vintage lure bass tournament. Kind of like they have this. Do they have those?
They do. They actually do. In this country, they're very small. They're almost like clubs. But Japan does that. There's a large club. I'm not sure if it's still going, but it was very active 10 years to 20 years ago. They specified, there were like parameters, like you could only use lures from the 50s, plastic lures like the head and spook type lures back then. And then you could only use a certain rod and reel, within a certain date 10-year span or whatever. Tackle boxes, everything was from a period, and they competed on the lakes in Japan. And there's that happens here. There's some guys I know in the National Fishing Lure Collectors Club who have these casting competitions and also fishing competitions. And it's cool to see, and they're relegated to vintage lures and vintage equipment, even down to the line. They use old line.
Wow.
Is there like a main website for lure collecting? Like, I mean, if you want to know about tournament fishing, you go to Bassmaster. Where do you want to go if you want to learn the basics of vintage lure collecting?
Yeah, there's several. Social media has a presence in the hobby also. You can go, or I should say we have a presence in social media, the hobby does. There's numerous, just if you type in antique lure, antique reel, antique tackle on Facebook, you'll get a number of pages. Also, the National Fishing Lure Collectors Club, that's the largest organization in the world. They're always looking for new members, and you can learn a lot. They have a good website, very educational, and they're dedicated to bringing awareness to the hobby and trying to spread the word, and so that people see the value in this stuff. I mean, it's part of our heritage, part of our history, and like I said, so much of it started and pioneered here in the United States. The Europeans were doing it long before us, but they weren't doing bass reels and wooden lures. That all happened here in our culture.
Isn't there a big, they still have that museum at the Oklahoma Aquarium there in Tulsa where it's got a bunch of the original.
From Carl's collection.
Carl White. Yeah, I don't know if it's still there. It may still be there. I'm not sure. But the best way to immerse yourself and learn about it is not only through websites, but there's shows, and they're all over the country. They're sanctioned by the NFLCC. There's also the Old Reel Collectors Association, ORCA, and those guys have shows, and they invite the public. Some of them you can come in as a guest, some you have to join to get in, but the cost is minimal. It's just to, kind of make sure that you're committed to it to get you in there. But extremely educational. There are exhibits. There's just vintage lures, vintage reels, everything related to fishing, memorabilia, advertising, ephemera, anything you can think of relative to fishing are at these shows, and it's extremely educational. And you can see the evolution of reel design, lure design, rods, nets, the outboards. I mean, there's a guy that comes to some of the shows and brings all the old outboards, the little kickers,
Wow.
So it's really cool to see that, there's a group of people out there that are trying to preserve our heritage in angling.
All right, last question, then we'll let you go. A number of people want to know, is there one specific lure that you're looking for right now?
I'm always looking for some obscure lure, but no single lure comes to mind. I just have a lot of interest, and Florida lures intrigue me. I like mechanical lures. I like frogs. Back in the very beginning, a lot of the lures were fashioned after creatures, everything from birds to frogs to fish to insects. And then they became a little more abstract, like spinners came. Spinners were there, but they became more abstract as time came along. I don't know. It all intrigues me, and the next lure is the best lure.
I need to send you a picture of the. I got a lure. It's from. I don't even know if you'd call it a lure. It's like Lucky Strike, but not the Lucky Strike. I think it's like Lucky Strike. It's from Canada. It's like a green box, and it's a harness that you basically strap a live frog into this harness. It looks like a life jacket for a frog, and then there's a hook on the bottom of it, so you don't ever have to actually hook the frog. You put this life jacket on him and then send him out.
Yeah, but it's a death jacket's what it is.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Absolutely, yeah. They had frog harnesses back in the days. Frogs were really durable, much more so than like a shad or a shiner or something, some other kind of live bait. A frog was pretty tough. You could catch more than one fish on a frog, and they'd put them in these little harnesses with hooks and strap them in. It was as sick as that sounds.
Wow.
It might have been effective because there's quite a few of those things out there. I'll tell you another one that's pretty hard to fathom, and that is the glass minnow tube. It was truly like a test tube with a hook harness on the outside, and you'd put a live minnow inside the tube, put the cap on, and throw that tube around or troll it and catch fish. And there's enough of them around, they must have sold because they survived the test of time.
Very cool. All right, Bernie, man, we're going to let you go. Can't thank you enough, especially after a very, very long trip from Oklahoma to Florida, taking time out to come on the show and giving us your perspective on some of the things that went down this year, and like Tenkiller and so many other things. So,
anytime, I love you guys, and anytime I can help, just give me a shout and don't give up on me. I know I'm on the backside of my career, but I'm not done yet, and I feel like next year will be better. I'm going to make it better. I promise you.
All right, cool stuff. All right, best of luck to you, Bernie. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, see you. There you have it, Bernie Schultz.
I think it's very easy to get lost in this because Bernie has perpetually looked and acted like he's like 40 years old for the last 30 years of his life, but the dude just turned 65.
I hope I look that good
in
at 65,
September,
man.
And what you're talking about is practicing for 3 days, fishing for 2 days, driving to Lake Fork, which is like kind of that way.
It's
the
like
wrong
4 hours.
4
3.5
hours. Then fishing the very next day. Then driving 15 to 18 hours again.
Yeah.
It's the dude's got
impressive.
It's very impressive.
Here's the other thing too. When he finally decides on, the whole tournament thing, I'm finally done, and he officially retires. The dude's got game to get involved in television or
absolutely. You know what I see him doing? I see him being a professor at a small school in Florida where he teaches the history of bass fishing or something in the antique. I could see him. He looks like a college professor. I could see him teaching a master's level class in his spare time. That fair point?
I agree. But he has way too much experience, way too much knowledge in this game. And there is value.
Did you know that he's part of the $1 Million Club?
Yeah. So
9 classic appearances.
When the day comes, and I think it's a pretty good ways away, but when that day comes that he says no more tournaments, there is going to be plenty for Bernie Schultz to do in this game, Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to wrap things up here tomorrow. Hopefully, keep your fingers crossed. We will have Carl on. If not, we will have maybe take some phone calls from the viewers. Might do that. You said you had some kind of backup plan.
I'll run it past you.
All right.
Not because Carl's blow us off, but literally, I believe he's got over 1,000 texts and 500 calls.
A lot of people are happy for him.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
So Kyle Monty said on stage, dude, when you suck, the only 2 people that call you are your mom and your wife. He goes, when you're doing good, he goes, you can't even answer all the calls. He's like, so I'd like to thank my mom and my wife.
That's a good point.
And I want to make next year to where I get more calls after every tournament instead of just those 2 individuals.
That's a good thing. All right, everybody. Thanks once again to Bernie Schultz for taking time out after a very long drive from Oklahoma and Texas.
That's a good guess. That's a good guess. That's a good...
well, you know me. I'm always looking at the first guy out.
I'll give it up to you on that one.
So good stuff. Hopefully Carl tomorrow, then Eric Lopez on Wednesday.
It's a big week. I got to figure out who I'm putting on my fantasy team, Mark.
It's a big week for
you.
In
all these groups, I'm 11 in the world. 11 in the world, Mark. We're talking Antarctica.
It's a lot of people.
Russia.
The world.
China.
Lithuania.
I'm 11 out of all of them.
Brazil.
In all these dang groups that I'm in, Robert DeGraffenreid from Oklahoma City, who takes care of your lawn. He's like a guru. He's got like an empire of lawn care around here. He's number 2. What are the odds of that?
He's a good dude,
He's costing me a lot of money right now. I got to catch him.
I'll tell you what you would tell me. Do better. Isn't that what you would tell me?
That's what I would tell you. I'm going to do better. And I had a great week. He just had an even better week.
Okay.
Like I had a Chris Zaldain week in fantasy fishing. He had a freaking Carl Jocumsen week.
Exactly. All right, great stuff. Thank you. Make sure, if you're listening to us on iTunes, please rate us, give us a review. I want to try and get to 750 by the end of the year, Matthew.
What are you going to give away if we get to 750?
I will think about that and let everybody know tomorrow. How about that?
Between the reviews this week to 750.
That's it. That's it.
We out-talked our bumper music.
We did.
That's fine.
All right, and then I've got something tomorrow. I just got to get off my chest,
How long
man.
we got? How long before this bumper music runs out?
A couple of minutes.
All right, hit it.
Oh, I'm not going to do it.
You got something to get off your chest tomorrow.
Tomorrow. I'm just going to wait
You're
till
just going to let it stew?
I am tired of it.
You're going to let it simmer?
It's been
for
simmering
another 23 hours.
For a number of weeks now, and I'm just tired of it.
Is it about,
Matthew.
are you upset with me?
No.
You upset with an angler?
No.
An organization?
Maybe. It's just simmering. I don't understand. I want somebody to tell me.
Is this manifesto level?
No.
Just rant.
No, it's not even a rant. It's just, come on, guys. If you're going to do something, then do it. If you're not going to do it, then just shut up about it.
All right, well, you officially have me intrigued.
All right.
23 hours from now, tomorrow, Tuesday, September 24th.
Oh, by the way, the other thing, too, I want to ask Carl if we have him on, really anybody. The way that he fought those fish, all the way around the boat. I was just like, oh, no, he's going to get it tangled up in the in the motor, in the
he
poles.
He seemed to like to direct him back towards the prop and poles.
I know. I was like, come on, man, are you serious?
That was his preferred method of wearing him out.
So just like
figure eighting him around the old prop.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. All right, everybody, have a great start to the week. We're out of here.